Hello people, Carol Sakey here, Wake Up New Zealand. Today I'd like to talk about the extradition bill, the Hong Kong Extradition Bill, and the students in New Zealand who are protesting against this bill. So, the immediate cause of the protest for these students about this legislation of the Hong Kong Extradition Bill are for many reasons. And they are very valid reasons to be worried and to be fearful as to how this extradition bill will affect their lives. These reasons are not unfounded, and we need to sit up and take note of what is going on here. There's a very strong concern that Beijing will be able to seize anyone that sets foot in Hong Kong, whether they be in transit or not. So, therefore, they could whisk people off to mainland China on jumped-up charges that do not even exist. So this bill is also called the Fugitives Bill. Under the basic law of Hong Kong, they have a mini constitution, but it is accountable to Beijing. Hong Kong courts have very, very limited ways of protecting Hong Kong civilians from communist China from actually whisking people off to mainland China. They can't protect them. There's an insufficient procedure. So they can't protect the human rights of people who live in Hong Kong. Even Amnesty International have expressed concerns for the people in Hong Kong because of China's legal, or should I say illegal, corrupt, horrendous system. The communist Chinese government. So therefore, with no protection, these people in Hong Kong are vulnerable. They're vulnerable to horrendous treatment by the communist Chinese government. The Chinese regime that is currently has political prisoners, thousands and thousands of them. They commit terrible crimes upon innocent Chinese people. So after the takeover in 1997 by China, people from Hong Kong was promised civic freedoms, a high degree of autonomy for at least over the next 50 years. They were promised judicial independence, and that is enshrined in this agreement. There was no existing extradition treaty with China. One country, two systems. So in New Zealand, students from Hong Kong are protesting, and they have every reason to do so. They're using the free speech front to do this in universities. Universities are seen as a place where students are allowed to speak freely, to express themselves without persecution. So, in October this year, there was a heated confrontation where Chinese students crowded a a student from Hong Kong and pushed her to the ground. She was physically assaulted. The Chinese consulate stated that they applauded this sort of behaviour by the Chinese students. This is the way of the tyranny of Chinese communism. The students have been showing solidarity with pro-democracy in Hong Kong. They are against the tyranny of communist China. So, the Chinese consulate also said of the New Zealand media that reported this incident that the media reporter was biased and painted a false picture of the situation in Hong Kong. And as for the reasons why Hong Kong students would actually cover their faces with masks, with facial recognition, Chinese communist leaders, protesters, Chinese students may take reprisals against Hong Kong students. And this is a serious, serious issue. So, anyhow, the student who was pushed to the ground won't give her name because she's fearful of reprisals. And I don't blame her. I think I'd be fearful of reprisals too. So, let's talk a bit more about some of the problems that exist for innocent people in China. One of those is what we call Falun Gong, for practicing Falun Gong, which is a form of exercise done by millions where they use a positive energy against negative. But of course, they have been labelled as a cult, as a form of propaganda by the communist government to try and stop them. There are some terrible tales of murder and mutilation of innocent people's bodies in political prison camps in China, where body parts are sold off for a high price to people around the globe. This is called human organ harvesting. There is a huge database for organs on demand. Yes, and they use political prisoners to do this. Kidneys, livers, hearts are sold on demand to overseas patients. These prisoners are tissue typed and killed once a matching recipient is found for their organs. And the perpetrators are the officials of the Communist Party of China, acting in cahoots with surgeons, prison authorities and military officials. These are victims held in concentration camps, ready to be dissected, after which their bodies are cremated. I know the story sounds almost impossible to believe, but it's happening, and it's happening now, and it's been happening for years. So our government in New Zealand, they never mention this, do they? They wouldn't dare, would they? It might affect their free trade agreement. After all, it's all about trading with China. And now this government allows a huge footprint by the communist Chinese government into New Zealand. They have their Confuscious Insitutes in our universities that leak out communism. And is that okay? It's not okay. We should be standing up and we should be demanding that this stops. We need to talk publicly about what happens in communist China. This government is making communist China their best friend. They're doing huge trade-offs. Tourism for communism. Come on, people. Here we are in New Zealand allowing our government to make friends with these murderers. These people who dissect live human bodies. Bodies that are just sitting there, can do nothing, just wait to have their hearts ripped out, their eyes used, their kidneys used. It's just shocking. It's evil, it's satanic, and by going along with communist China, this government, I feel, is just playing a part in it. This needs to be publicised. Thank you, people.